Hey guys, today we are going to talk about cooperative bodywork. And Brianna is the best one to talk about this with because she does a lot of this. She was recently here, so she lives in Ontario, Canada, and I'm in Texas in the US. And recently she was here and did a little bit of body work with my guys and then also some of my clients in the area. And it was really cool to watch her work because it all was cooperative. It was all at liberty. We didn't tie up any horses. We didn't restrain them or restrict them in any way. They got to really have a voice and communicate what they needed and how they needed it. And so I feel like this is a really valuable conversation for the horse community to be having so that we can better support our horses, that we can, we're spending all this energy and time and financial investment in supporting our horses with body work. But what could we be doing to help that body work be even more effective and also have a tremendous impact on our horses' welfare, mentally, physically, all of that? How can the body work that you either are applying yourself because you're learning how to do it or are hiring a professional to come work with your horse, how can we maximize that time and that investment? And how can we best support our horses through cooperative body work and with their body work in general? So we're going to be talking about that today and we're going to dive into it. And so I'm going to let you take over, Brianna, and we're going to start off with talking about why it's important for body work to be cooperative. So where do you think is, I guess, what would you say is the most, or not even the most, just like what's important? Why is it so important to do it cooperatively?
Because horses are sentient beings. They have thoughts and opinions and feelings. And I really strive, and I know you do as well, to honor their voice throughout any interaction, whether that's training or veterinary or farrier and bodywork appointments. They're not these events don't occur in isolation. And when we are striving to be interacting with our horses in this way, it's important that we maintain clarity through our interactions and really try to uphold these standards of consent and cooperation throughout all our interactions. And let's face it, bodywork is not an emergency. Our horses don't, in most cases, don't need to have bodywork done on them. So we have a little bit of wiggle room. It's not this black and white, our horse has to have body work done, so we must tie them. There can be consent and cooperation in it. And I think it makes for such a beautiful dialogue between horse and body worker and owner, because when the horse feels freedom to truly express themselves and feels safe in the session, as the body worker, I get a more accurate and authentic read on how the horse is doing. And it helps me stay safe as a practitioner because I'm not worried that the horse is hiding their true feelings only to explode later. So it's important for both the horse to be a fully involved member of their healing process. And it's important for me as a practitioner because I am safer in the long run.
Mm-hmm. And when you say most horses don't need it, it's not that all horses could benefit from body work, right? And it's supportive and it's part of their care package. It should be part of the care package, but it's not something that, except for in certain situations, is necessary tomorrow. Like it has to happen right now at 10 a.m. Today. It's, unlike some medical care, where they're colicking or choking and it's an emergency. We really got to take care of this right now. But even then we try, you and I and people that align with us we do try and prep our horses so that those experiences can also be cooperative, that we can help them have a better experience even in the emergencies. So let's say your body work situation, for whatever reason, is more of an emergency type thing. We could still achieve that in a cooperative way as well. But usually we have time to prep for bodywork sessions. Usually we have time to help our horses be just understanding of what's being expected of them, understanding that this is going to be a safe, enjoyable experience for them, and understanding that they have a voice, that they can communicate, and we can build up to full body work sessions more regularly and so on. And so I think that's also really important to add in there. Is it something that we can work up to, so that we can actively provide all of our horses as much as possible with that body work to support them. So I want to come back to why it's important for body work to be cooperative. But really quick, I think it'd be important to get on the same page as far as what does this look like? Like, what does a cooperative body work session look like? Just real practical application. Like, you show up at the barn and you're working with the horse. What does that look like to you?
I think it's going to be different for every horse and owner, but the easiest way to provide a horse with full autonomy is to work with them without any kind of constraints or restraints on them. So this would be working on them in their field where they're free to walk away without a halter and lead rope on them. And I do believe that we can have consent and autonomy while still using tools like a halter and lead rope, but removing those and working with the horse completely at liberty is going to be the easiest way to ensure that we don't accidentally uh, punish them or restrain them or
mm-hmm. Kind of suppress
quiet.
that voice. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't accidentally quiet their voice.
Yeah.
So, whether we're working with a horse at liberty in their stall or at liberty in their field or in a feed pen situation, somewhere where they feel safe is going to be really important here, because when we're asking our horses and opening up this container for them to feel free to share their voice and free to have this autonomy, we need to work with them in a space they feel safe to do so. For every horse, this is going to be different. Some are going to want to be in with their herd, and others are going to feel vulnerable being in with their herd if they're with, pushy or anxious herd mates that are going to be all over the body worker for the attention and creating a little bit of separation while maybe still being in sight vicinity can be really supportive for some horses. Again, you just have to play with it. This is not, I can't really give a cut and dry black and white answer because every horse is different. And what it looks like for one horse to set them up for success in a cooperative body work appointment might not look the exact same for another horse. And
oh, go ahead.
I think with it as well, it's really important to meet the horse where they're at that day. Just because you had a really successful session with a horse working out with them in their field one day doesn't mean that every day that you show up to do body work on them that they're going to want to work out in their field. They might have had an argument with their companions last night that you don't know about, and they might find more support in being separated. So it's really important to ask our horses and meet them where they're at every time we show up to work with them, whether that's in bodywork or training.
To me, too, from a behavior perspective, what it looks like when a horse is actively cooperating in the body work. So from that perspective of what it looks like, a horse that is actively communicating and expressing themselves, expressing how they feel. And you and I have talked about this, how sometimes you'll start working with a horse and they don't have a lot of experience with being listened to and their voice being heard and ever having a choice to walk away. So at first they kind of just cope with it and they're just kind of quiet, and there's not a lot of back and forth communication through their body language and your body language basically too. And then over time they start to experiment with expressing themselves a little bit more. But horses that have a lot more autonomy from the beginning and have experience and a reinforcement history that tells them that their voice is heard, that their voice is respected, are going to be a little bit more communicative during the bodywork sessions. So, the body worker might move their hand into a certain spot and you might see an ear twitch back and like firmly back, like no, and then like some tightening of the nostril and maybe some tension around the eye. And then the body worker, respecting that communication, will probably soften or move to a slightly different spot, or we can talk about specifics later. But, there's going to be some adjustments or just waiting and seeing if they're going to be okay. Like if we settle into this. But either way, the body worker is acknowledging that communication and respecting it and making adjustments accordingly based off of that history with that horse, or, developing that communication with that horse. And then the horse is transparent and communicative about how they're feeling. And to me, that's another way, or another aspect of what a cooperative bodywork session looks like, is that back and forth dialogue versus seeing a horse as in, like, the body worker will likely understand, okay, if this horse kicks out at me or gives me ears back or something like that, oh, that's a painful spot. And if they don't make any adjustments at all, or if they dismiss it as them being sensitive or bratty, or she's just being a mare, or they just ignore that communication altogether, then that horse starts to learn that they don't have that voice. And it's no longer a cooperative bodywork session. It's now me doing bodywork to you, whether you want it or not. And there's no back and forth dialogue anymore. So that's another way that kind of cooperative bodywork, like how we can look at telling the difference between the two. When does that horse have a voice and a choice, and when do they not? And bodywork is just happening to them. Would you agree with that?
100%. And body work is for the horse's health and their benefit. So when we're asking our horses to suppress their voice, that has negative health consequences, whether that is ulcers or hidden pain, or, the body holds on to emotions, and emotions can become trapped in the soft tissue. So if we're offering our horses bodywork support with the intent to heal them, we need to be open to the whole process and every aspect that entails, and really honoring their voice so that they can experience the full healing process, full,
Mm-hmm.
full scope of it.
Mm-hmm. And when we push past that, those communications, when we override their voice and we're just like, sorry, you have to deal with it, we really start having a negative impact on that nervous system and just their mental health altogether. And also we
Mm-hmm.
break down that trust too, right? Between the body worker, the professional, or whoever is working with them, and the horse, because they're like, now this person doesn't listen at all. Now I need to go in protective mode. I'm like protecting my body. I'm protecting myself. Yes, I'm going to sit here and tolerate this, but it's going to have less or a different kind of impact on them than when they are able to communicate and be heard and feel safe and to have that trust with the body worker. So that's going to have a really big impact there.
Yeah, we know the impacts of long-term cortisol and stress on the body, and it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
I really find it supportive when I'm opening up a session with a horse to figure out how they communicate and how the cooperative process looks like, because every horse is different. For some horses, and an ear pin is going to be huge communication. It's going to be like, I'm celebrating this ear pin because maybe this horse wasn't communicative with me before, or maybe they were just very tolerant, and now I've got an ear pin, and this is such valuable information for me as a body worker, because the horse is telling me how they're truly feeling. Versus other horses, we might have a little bit of a different communication style. There might be, you know, more ear pinning or tail swishing, and I'm not ignoring these behaviors or blowing past them. I'm also taking them as communication, and I'm walking that fine line between recognizing that there is discomfort or pain or distress there, and supporting the horse to move through it and building that resilience in that moment of tension or discomfort.
And just like with people, some people are much more stoic, or just, even if they're experiencing the same level of pain, which again, it's hard to measure, and there's not straight across the board. I mean, there's a reason that even in humans, we have a hard time. You can't tell a human whether or not they're in pain. Only they can say how much pain they're in, and there's no way to measure it really. Uh, um, Same thing happens in horses too, where, and this is the whole deeper, big conversation too, as far as like how connected with their body they are, and like maybe they really aren't feeling, what's going on, like what you're working on. Like I know I've had horses with neurological things, and I'm like pretty sure there's something going on here, but she does not seem at all aware of this, and it's because of the neurological stuff. There's just not that connection there. But going back to the stoic versus more
Expressive.
expressive, there you go, that's the word.
Yeah.
Some horses are just going to be quicker and more expressive with how things feel in their body than other horses. And additionally, also, some horses struggle more with giving up that control over their body or weird sensations in their body. So sometimes it's not even probably, I don't want to speak for my horses, but the thought is that it's not so much about pain as it is that's a weird, unsafe feeling sensation, and I don't know what to do with that, and I'm having a hard time. So there's a lot of room for outside of pain when it comes to body work, and then letting them communicate all these things, and then building that trust and showing them that you're not going to push them past their threshold. You're not going to override that. You're respecting and honoring the fact that that is scary to them, and we're going to adjust accordingly, and we're going to be here and be patient, and it doesn't have to happen today. Like it can happen over time. It doesn't have to be right this second. I love that aspect of taking a more cooperative approach to body work.
And what I find gives me so much empathy when working with the horses is when we book a bodywork appointment for ourselves as humans, there's an understanding that it may be uncomfortable before it gets better. And we are able to book the appointment for ourselves. We know that we show up to the bodyworker and we have a clear understanding of what's expected for us. Our horses don't have that. I show up I show up for their therapy session and I'm like, sit down on the couch and they're like, hold on, who are you, lady? What are you doing in my house? Right? Can you imagine if that happened to you as a human? You would not feel safe in your nervous system. So it's so important that we lay the groundwork and put in that foundation to build trust from day one and don't just expect to come busting down the door and putting our hands all over them, right? Like nobody's okay with that.
Like they're a
I'm not.
complete stranger, but I want you to unpack all of your stuff, like physically, mentally, emotionally, unpack it all, like just expose it all. I mean, that's like the absolute opposite of what our bodies and our nervous system wants us to do. They're like, no, keep that stuff together. Like you can't show any of that. That's not safe, especially to somebody you don't know and hasn't
Yeah.
proven that they're not going to hurt you. I mean, that's especially for these horses that are packing around a lot of stuff physically. I mean, like emotionally, but in their physical body.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're not worth. It's distrust until proven otherwise. It's you're not safe until proven otherwise, and that's not going to happen in an hour-long appointment. It's probably, I mean, very unlikely. It's going to happen over many, many, many sessions, depending on the horse and the body worker, of course, and how they kind of connect and the environment and so on and so forth. But that's another important aspect to remember too, and I'm glad you brought that up. What about using food during body work? I know we've talked about this extensively, but for our audience today, whoever's listening, let's dive into a little bit controversial, maybe topic of using food during body work. What are your opinions on it, and how do you use it or not use it?
I know that this is a highly debated topic by everyone, and everyone's free to have their own opinions about it. And I will always say, do what works for you and for your horse and what keeps everybody safe. For me in my practice, I do offer horses food during sessions at times when I feel it would be beneficial to help break the ice and help build some introductory positive associations with me as the body worker. When I'm offering food to them during a session, I want to be really mindful of the way I'm doing that. I think we can very quickly enter into coercive territory where we're blowing past the horse's true feelings if we're not careful about how we use food. So, what this often looks like for me is, if I'm working on a horse at liberty out in their field, maybe they have the hay bale that they're munching on while we are doing body work. Or if they're in their stall, maybe they're eating from a hay net. I don't typically go for like reaching for meals, like their grain or their supplements during body work, or hand feeding them, like making it into the context of a training session. Simply because I do want there to be a level of presence and awareness into their body. And I'm not saying that we can't have body awareness when we're using food, but the majority of horses have quite a significant amount of food anxiety around meal times or even around training sessions. So it's important to me that there's as much presence and attunement into their physical selves as we can get. And I think that we can get pretty darn close to that while they are just simply eating grass or eating hay. A boring resource that they have access to at the majority of the time, and they feel confident moving away from it, maybe to another resource, or maybe to go stand under the tree in their paddock. We want there to be no coercion present, and no feeling like they can't step away if they need it. But sometimes that little bit of a distraction, that little bit of something for them to do, can be helpful when there's a lot of uncertainty or anxiety around me as the body worker. And I'm still, when there is food present, I'm still watching their body language. I'm watching their facial expressions and their ears. And I'm making sure that if they need a break, I'm giving them a break. And I'm just looking for those really subtle communications, because often when the horses are eating food, I find that it does uh, not dull, but like the
They
communications
tolerate a
that
little
they,
bit more, and they're,
yeah,
yeah.
the communications that I get are a little bit more subtle, so I have to be a little bit more on my game.
Hmm.
But it can be very helpful for some horses, and I'm not opposed to it in any way.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you brought up. It really needs to be a non-contingent reinforcer. So that's
Hmm.
the behavior and animal training world. That's what we talk about. It's like I mean, technically there's always something contingent. So we get into the nuances of that. But what we mean by that is they don't have to necessarily do any one specific thing to get the reinforcer, to get the food. And so because a couple of my guys do better, at least starting off the bodywork session with some food until they settle in and are getting, into that kind of mood. And then they will sometimes come off of it, or if they're working with a body worker, like a professional that comes in that there's a little bit less of that history with, sometimes that can be really helpful. For me personally, I'm able to do some body work with my guys just because I'm a newbie at it, without having food present. But when I do use it, whether it's with a professional or myself, it's like you said, just their hay net that's sitting there, or sometimes hay nets can make them, if they're not used to them, a little bit agitated. So just some loose hay is really helpful, just like on the floor, just a pile of loose hay. I like to let them eat on it for a while, so they've had some time to become a little bit satiated and level out, and just like, okay, the food is just here. It's not running out. It's okay. It's not leaving. And then I ask if we're okay to, move into doing some body work, and every day it's a little different, but that's how I will do it with my guys. And my guys have hay 24/7, and they're on dry lots, but they have hay and slow feeder nets 24/7. And they do fairly often get just like a loose flake of hay just for whatever, just for different reasons. So it's not like super exciting, high value for them to get a really, just a flake of hay. With clients' horses, though, that may not be yet on a 24/7 forage, I might ask them to do something like give them loose hay or hay in a hay net for 30 minutes before. And then we just kind of continue on with that, and we introduce whatever it is we're introducing into. But yes, definitely, I agree on the not hand feeding and not making it like a really high value meal or a grain or something really sweet or anything. Just a plain simple hay is really beneficial for just helping develop those associations and building that trust. And we have to remember that horses are actively offering behavior continuously while they're eating. I mean, they eat 18 plus hours a day, and they are moving while eating. They're socializing while eating. They're doing all kinds of things while eating. That's how they're designed. They're a little bit different than us and dogs and birds, and even like a lot of marine animals, where they don't really hunt and then sit down and eat. They're just eating and offering behavior continuously. They're moving and eating. They're moving and eating. And so they are masters at multitasking. They can eat and think and eat and process and eat and train and eat and offer behavior. They can eat and do pretty much anything. They can eat and run. Like, it's all kinds of stuff. So, I think that can really help us take away that
Stigma.
stigma around feeding our horses. And, they're not paying enough attention to us. They're distracted, or we're bribing them into this. Again, it's not about, we're not bribing them. They have the hay no matter what. It's just part of it. It becomes part of that entity and arrangement, a part of that setup so that our horses can help feel a little bit more relaxed. It's no different than like when I go get my own body work, the therapist will play some nice music. She'll ask me what type of music I like. She'll make sure the room is a comfortable temperature. She'll, ask me if I want a blanket, if I want my legs propped up, whatever it is, right? She's working at making the environment really calming and soothing and making it a good experience for me. And there's usually usually like some fancy water is what I call it, available, and even maybe some snacks or stuff for afterwards. I don't know. It's like I don't see it as any different than that. We're doing what the horse needs, at least to begin with, to feel more at ease, so we can actually start having that impact, and then showing them that the body work is actually going to feel good and it's going to help them, and they're going to want more of it. And then a lot of times we can fade it out later. Not for every horse, but I think a lot of them, we can fade that out later and it's not really necessary anymore. And they start to enjoy the body work by itself without needing all of these other extra steps to help them.
And often you will see them faded out voluntarily by themselves. Like they will
Yeah.
leave the hay or stop eating for a few moments to process and to integrate what's being offered to them. The way I see it is if you have two options, either your horse doesn't want body work and is unsafe with the body worker and you can't give them body work, or you give them hay and they have body work, like which one is giving them the benefits of body work? If they eat hay while they're having the body work, they're still getting body work benefits versus if they're not having body work at all, or they're having body work, but they're being repressed and shut down through the body work experience. We know that there's negative consequences to that. Like out of those two options, which one do we want? We want the horses to have the body work. So if we have to make concessions, even they're not really concessions, but if we have to make accommodations to meet our horses where they're at and create this relaxing environment so that they can enjoy their bodywork experience, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Give the horse some hay. It's not going to hurt anybody.
Fun story. So my horses, so this has to do with you, Brianna, when you were here. My horses always like to eat. They're really intense about eating their hay. Again, they have it 24/7, but there's times of the day where horses are more actively eaters. And that's usually around dawn and dusk. And my guys are no different. And so right around sunset and a little bit like an hour or two before that and like an hour or two after that, they are intense eaters. They just want to sit at the hay nets and they just want to eat. Well, and they rarely, like, they'll come out and do a training session with me, but they definitely don't want body work usually during those times. So, but then Brianna's there, and two of my guys, or three, was it three horses? I think it was two at first. They see her at the top of the hill, and they both leave their hay net at that time of the day, and they come up and they just are like go into immediate Zen mode right around her, and are like, okay, we're doing this thing. And so, like you just said, they will often, once they figure out some of the benefits and it starts to feel good for them, they will fade out that food themselves and they will start taking advantage of the times when you are offering it. And that's when, you've really started to tap into things for them. Not to say you're not tapping into things if you still have to use food, but it was really cool to see that. And every day will be different. I don't necessarily expect that to happen tomorrow, but it was cool on that day that happened. I was like, yes, we're making progress. This is awesome.
They really do figure it out. They're so wise and in tune with their bodies. And when we give them the opportunity to experience it and decide when they want body work and how that looks like, it really makes for such a beautiful experience.
Now, as a behavior consultant, I need to make a quick little safety disclaimer here. If your horse has serious resource guarding behaviors, I would highly recommend not providing food during any type of physical interaction or close proximity until you have helped your horse through that. So we really, before we start introducing food with the body worker and having that professional come in and having that food there, if your horse has displayed any kind of resource guarding towards people when food is around, there needs to be more steps before we start introducing that. And this is where working with a professional such as myself or others is going to be really important to help your horse start to feel safer and more trusting of people when food is involved. And then potentially we can progress to having it involved during other times, like when the body worker's there, or maybe in this case, we don't involve food at all during the bodywork session. That's okay. But if you find yourself in the situation where you can't do the body work without the food, but also you can't do it with the food and you're kind of stuck, then maybe this third step where we need to first work on how your horse feels about food is going to be the first place to start. And then we can progress from there. So there can be different journeys for every horse human team, and no two paths are going to look exactly the same. But that's just a little disclaimer I wanted to put there before anybody runs out and tries to have the body worker out with food and get somebody hurt on accident. So do make sure your horse is really comfortable around food and people before doing that.
Yeah, that's really helpful and important. I think protected contact is
Mm.
another really helpful tool that we can utilize during bodywork sessions. If the horse isn't comfortable sharing the same space with the body worker, putting that fence is a really nice visual, tangible barrier and
Mm-hmm.
offers safety for both parties.
I did this for a while with one of my mares. She had for a year, I think most of all of her bodywork sessions were in protected contact. So we have 4-board oak fencing and you can kind of put your arm through it or over it. And even at one point, the body worker was kind of like standing on the bottom rail. I was like, oh, be safe. But it was really helpful for my mare because when the person was in the area with her, just her protective spatial bubble was really big. And the fence allowed her to feel much safer having people closer to her. And so she actually would come and line herself up along the fence and offer like her head or her shoulder or her hind ends, like you can work on this. And then when she needed that space, she could step away. So it was really clear communication on both sides. It allowed it to be truly cooperative. And she had a very strong voice in that whole experience and allowed her to start to build some trust with the body worker. And also it kept the body worker safe. I don't have any problems doing what is necessary to keep the body worker safe as well. That is really important to consider. It's not just about the horse. Everybody needs to have a good experience at the end of the day. So we do love protected contact as well. That's another really good point to bring up.
And the owner has to feel safe, right?
Mm.
As your horse's caregiver, if you're entering into an appointment on edge and feeling anxious about how your horse might behave or what the expectations are of them or whether or not the body worker is judging you, like that will play a huge role into your horse's experience of the session because horses and owners are so deeply connected. So finding a way to verbalize that and communicate with your body worker the steps to take to set everyone up for success, yourself, your horse, and the practitioner. I'm always more than happy to hear owner suggestions on how to set them and their horse up for success because it's important to me that everyone has a good experience. And bodywork is an incredibly healing thing for horses and their humans. We often don't realize how much entanglement and kind of, what do I want to call it? Like it's not that you're causing your horse's issues or your horse is causing your issues, but you guys do share a lot of stuff. And there can be crossover between some of the challenges that you're facing with some of the challenges your horse is facing. So you really need to embark on this healing journey together. And while I'm not a human body worker, I do encourage all my clients to go and work with a body worker for themselves to support them and their horse. If they're supporting their horse, they have to support themselves. How it goes.
Despite the age old horse person problem where we spend all of our money on our horses and then we're
Right?
over here eating ramen and hobbling around on one leg with a crutch and we're like, we're going to get on and ride even though the doctor said not to.
I know, I get it. I've been there.
I know. I can tell you guys from experience if it helps you feel any better. I resisted going to do body work for myself for a long time, mostly because I struggle with a lot of the more invasive stuff like massage therapy, chiropractic stuff. Any of it, not that those are bad, it's just me personally. I struggle with them. So I found a craniosacral therapist that was so within 3 sessions. First of all, she like cured some things I have been dealing with for years, and I was like, why did I wait so long? And then two, um, man, we tapped into some stuff I had been storing in my body for a long time. Like I had huge emotional like moments. I don't even know how to explain them. It was just like huge moments of like, wow, I've been carrying that for so long and I have no idea where it came from. It just like popped out of nowhere. And I felt a big change in my relationship with specifically one of my horses, but probably two. I think she was trying to communicate with me that there was some stuff going on, and she was also had the emotional source we had both been through together. So anyways, it was very interesting to see how body work for myself turned around and really impacted my horsemanship and also impacted my horse's welfare. And like she started feeling better and acting a little bit differently. And so it was really cool to see how linked it was. And again, it wasn't that I was directly causing anything. I'm not blaming myself for anything. It's just like you said, we're just linked together. And because we spend so much time together and we do love our horses and we have a lot of emotional energy wrapped up in them and we want what's best for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
No,
really beneficial to also take care of ourselves. That's the whole point.
for sure. I love that story. It's so important to to support ourselves as much as we support our horses. They want us to support ourselves.
Yes, they do. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up there. Thank you so much for sharing all of that wonderful information with us. And again, you guys, if you have any questions, maybe you even want to share some stories yourself of experiences that you've been through with your horse or with the body workers, feel free to share that with us. We'd love to hear it. We'll be reading any comments and such. And yeah, so thank you guys so much.